She answered on the fourth ring. When I said her real name, there was a long silence. Long enough that I thought she was going to hang up. Then very quietly, almost below the level of speech, "Stop answering the calls. Please, just stop answering them." She had been hiding for 18 months. Different name, small town in western Montana. It had taken me 4 hours to find her. I said I needed to understand what was happening. She said, "I know you do. That's why it chose you." Not he. Not they. It. She disconnected before I could ask what she meant, and I sat with that word for a long time, because whoever had built the system calling me in my own voice had not picked me randomly. Something had been watching every dispatcher at that center. It had assessed them, and it had selected me, specifically, on a specific night, for a reason I had not yet identified. A woman was hiding in another state under a different name because of what I was in the middle of. Her first words to me were stop. I didn't stop. By Friday morning, I had been awake for most of 48 hours. I had driven alone at midnight to a crime scene I had received advance notice of from an untraceable number in my own voice. I had been told by my supervisor that the recording was corrupted, and I may have been asleep at my desk. I had been given a deadline I could not interpret. None of that was what occupied me. What occupied me was the problem. I have worked the night shift at the Seattle Emergency Communications Center for 6 years. In that time, I have developed one specific method for situations that exceed my immediate understanding. Separate what is verified from what is inferred and work only from the verified. Do not follow assumption into the dark. The assumed will lead you wrong every time. What I could verify, the calling system existed below the standard telecommunications infrastructure. That is not something you build by accident or from outside an institution. It requires technical knowledge and system access at a level not available to general personnel. Someone had built something inside the center's infrastructure, from inside the center. That was not inference. That was the only conclusion the evidence supported. I pulled the center's contractor records on Friday morning. I was looking for one specific profile, the kind of person who would know how to build what I was looking at, and the kind of person who would have reason to. His name was Owen Taft. He was 34 years old and he had been dead for 8 months. And the longer I read his file, the more certain I became that he had not built the system to harm me. He had built it because the correct channels had failed him and he was running out of time. He had been trying to warn someone. The question that took me the rest of that day to answer was why he had built it to warn me specifically. Before I continue, if you are watching this, drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I want to know. Like this video if the story has you already, and subscribe with notifications on because I am uploading one episode every day this week. You do not want to miss what comes next. Reed Callahan had left his personal number in a specific location within the call management system. A file attachment buried inside a routine maintenance log, time-stamped 8 months ago. He had put it there for whoever would eventually start investigating Owen Taft's connection to the center. He had waited 8 months for that person to appear. Callahan, Owen Taft died of a cardiac event in his apartment on a Monday morning in August. The official cause was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a condition he had never been diagnosed with and which showed no prior symptoms in any of his medical records going back 12 years. Marlowe, you didn't believe it. Callahan, I didn't believe it, but I closed the case. I had no evidence of anything else. And there were people in this department who made it very clear that Owen Taft's death was not something they wanted investigated further. The pressure came through channels that made it hard to trace back to a source, but it was real and it was specific to Owen's case. Marlowe, who were the people who wanted it closed? Callahan, I don't know. That's the honest answer. I've spent 8 months trying to find out. I told him about the calls. He listened without surprise. When I finished, he nodded and said, he built it. Marlowe, what do you mean he built it? Callahan, Owen Taft spent 3 years building the center's communication routing infrastructure. He had access to every layer, including layers that nobody else in that building understood well enough to modify. Whatever is calling you from that number, he built it. Before he died, he built a communication channel that exists outside the normal telecommunications infrastructure. That's why the number is unverifiable. He built his own channel. Marlowe, why would he do that? Callahan, because he knew something was going to happen. And he knew that whatever was going to happen would make normal channels unsafe to use. Callahan had done what investigating he could in the margin of his officially closed case. He had built a partial picture of what Owen had been doing inside the dispatch system in the months before he died. Owen had noticed something in his second year, a pattern in the system's call routing logs that should not have been there. Not a malfunction, a deliberate modification. Someone had inserted a secondary routing layer that duplicated certain categories of calls and sent a copy to an external address that Owen could not immediately trace. He had reported it through the center's internal IT security channel. The report had been acknowledged and then quietly archived without action. A few weeks later, the secondary routing layer had been removed, but it had reappeared 3 months after that, and again 3 months after that. Someone was consistently reinserting it and consistently having it cleaned up when it was found. Owen had started keeping his own records, not on the center system, on a personal encrypted drive. Owen had traced the secondary routing layer to a specific access credential. The credential belonged to an account called C. Ellery that had no corresponding real employee. He had determined that this account had been created by someone with system administrator privileges at the center. There were 4 people with that level of access. Owen was one of them. Of the remaining 3, one had joined the center 9 months before the routing layer first appeared. He had investigated that new administrator carefully and quietly. What he found was that the person was not who their personnel files said they were. The identity had been assembled from components, fabricated, good enough to pass a standard background check. But Owen was not a standard background check person. The person had been at the center for over 2 years when Owen died, and they were still there. Callahan slid the folder across the table, a copy of what was on Owen's encrypted drive, the parts he had been able to decrypt. Inside, dates, system log screenshots, the addresses of the intercepted calls, a diagram of the routing layer, and at the back, a printed page containing a list of 6 names. Personnel at the dispatch center who had the system access level required to have built and maintained the routing layer. I knew 5 of them immediately. Long-term staff. People I had worked alongside for years. People whose presence was so routine and unremarkable that the idea of any of them doing this required a specific mental effort. The 6th name I had never heard before. Marlowe, who is C. Ellery. Callahan, that's what I've been trying to figure out for 8 months. The name appears in the access logs going back 2 years, but the personnel file attached to that access credential doesn't match anyone in the center's official records. It's a ghost account, built inside the system, assigned access, and invisible to anyone who isn't specifically looking for it. Marlowe, someone created a fake employee account inside our system. Callahan, someone with high enough access to do that, yes. I looked at the list of names for a moment, then I looked up at him. Marlowe, the data being intercepted, what kind of calls? Callahan, Category 7, non-emergency welfare incidents with a follow-up flag, from a specific neighborhood on the north side. And within 72 hours of each intercepted welfare call, a reported incident at or near that address. I understood immediately. I had been dispatching for 6 years. I understood exactly what that pattern meant. Someone was using the center's welfare call data to identify vulnerable addresses. People who were alone and frightened and had just told a 911 dispatcher they felt unsafe at home. and whoever had that data was using it to find them. I spent Friday afternoon cross-referencing the center's personnel database with Owen's file. Among the 6 names on his list, one had left the center 18 months ago. A dispatcher named Vera Stanton, 4 years on the night shift, left 6 months after Owen had first reported the routing layer to IT security. Official record, voluntary resignation, personal reasons. I searched for Vera Stanton outside the personnel system. She had made herself findable only if you were determined and knew her former name. 4 hours of searching. A small town in western Montana. A different last name, her mother's maiden name. A P.O. box that took me 2 hours to connect to a physical address. I called the number I had found. She answered on the 4th ring. I said her name, her real name. There was a silence on the line, long enough that I thought she was going to hang up. Then she said, "How did you find me?" I said, "Owen Taft's file. He documented you." Another silence. Then very quietly, almost below the level of speech. "Stop answering the calls. Please, just stop answering them." "Marlowe, I can't stop. I need to understand what's happening." "Vera, I know you do. That's why it chose you." She disconnected before I could ask what she meant. "That's why it chose you." The word it. Not he, not they, it. Owen had built something capable of choosing, not randomly, selectively. It assessed the dispatchers at the center and identified the right one. Selected me specifically at a specific time because of a specific condition I had not yet identified. I pulled every shift log from the past 2 weeks. I was looking for what had made me the right recipient. Something in my recent call handling that had registered in whatever criteria Owen had built into the system. I found it at 11:40 on a Tuesday evening 2 weeks before the first unverifiable call. A routine noise complaint from a residential address in that specific neighborhood. I had dispatched a unit. Standard procedure. But then I had done one thing outside normal protocol. I requested a follow-up welfare check on the original caller 20 minutes after the unit cleared. Not because protocol required it. Because something in the caller's voice had told me they were frightened of something they were not saying. I had listened past the words. Owen's system had been watching for exactly that. A dispatcher who listened past the words. I went back to work Saturday. I needed to be in the building. I needed to look at the people around me with different eyes. 6 names on Owen's list. 5 people I knew. 1 ghost account. The ghost account had the access, the technical knowledge, and the motive. But someone in that building was C. Ellery or was maintaining C. Ellery's access. And C. Ellery had been active in the system as recently as 3 weeks ago. I sat at my desk, and I worked my shift, and I watched. I processed calls with the same precision I always do. I talked to Cal twice during the shift about routine matters. I handled a difficult call just before 2 a.m. that required 37 minutes and the coordination of 3 units. I did all of it exactly as I always do. At 2:14 in the morning, a new call appeared on my screen. The unverifiable number. I answered. The whispered voice said, "Look at the logs from 18 months ago, August through October. Category 7 calls. Look at the addresses, then look at who was on duty." The call disconnected. I started pulling the logs. 11 Category 7 calls from that neighborhood in the August to October window. Every single one handled by a dispatcher on the night shift. Every single one followed within 72 hours by a reported incident at or near that address. And I was not on duty for any of them. But Vera Stanton was on duty for 9 of the 11. I sat with that for 30 seconds. 9 calls, 9 subsequent incidents. Vera Stanton, who had left 18 months ago and was now living under a different name in Montana. Then I felt someone stop behind me. I turned around. Cal was standing behind me looking at my screen, at the Category 7 log I had pulled up, at the specific window of dates. His face had changed. Not dramatically, not the expression of someone caught at something, something quieter. The expression of a person who has been waiting for a moment to arrive and is now watching it arrive and does not know whether to be relieved or frightened. Cal, Marlowe. Marlowe, Cal. He pulled up the chair from the empty station beside mine and sat down. Cal, how much do you know? Marlowe, I know about Owen Taft, the secondary routing layer. See Ellery, I know you've seen that number before. He was quiet for a moment. The room was dark and the monitors glowed, and somewhere across the floor another dispatcher was handling a call. Cal, Owen came to me first, before he went to IT security. He told me what he had found and asked me what he should do. I told him to report it through the official channel. I told him it would be handled. He stopped. Cal, it wasn't handled. And then he died. And I have been sitting at that desk for 8 months, knowing that I told him the official channel was safe and it was not.